franktalks.com.
This program does not represent the views of this station and may be considered offensive to some listeners. This program may contain mature subject matter, including frank discussions of controversial topics. It is intended for mature, open-minded audiences. Discretion is highly advised. This program is entirely independently produced by and is copyrighted by Frank. It is broadcast here under license.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles, and I'm Frank because I have to be. In studio today I have a gentleman by the name of Scot McKay. Scot McKay has burst onto the scene around 2006 and quickly set himself apart with a unique approach he calls character-based. Through a combination of deserving what you want and decoding the opposite sex thought process, Scot talks about how a masculine, confident man of true character and leadership skills is an authentic representation of the man that is most desirable to women, getting rid of the need for tricks and techniques. His next-generation concepts transcend mere pickup and seduction and describe a state of having 100% control over one's dating life, culminating in the ability to attract the highest quality women on Earth, effectively manage relationships, and make wise decisions from a position of strength. Scot is well known for his monumental Virtuosity program, for his multiple top-ranked podcasts on iTunes, and his unique formula for online dating success, in which he objectively demonstrates how to literally dominate one's entire metro area on the dating site of your choice. He also represents a real-world example of how a man can effectively manage a successful dating life all the way to the end goal of building a long-term future with the greatest woman he has ever met. Scot's ultimate proof of concept is his wife, Emily, who is his podcast co-host and a well-known dating expert in her own right. Welcome to Frank Talks, Scot McKay.
Hey, Frank, what a blast to be here, man. Thanks for the invite.
This is really great. I've been wanting to have you on this show now since I met you, and now that the show is back up and running with new episodes, you were one of the first people I contacted to get this interview done, so the pleasure is truly mine. Let's start off with our first question, Scot. Where were you born? And tell me about your upbringing, which eventually led you to becoming a dating expert.
Wow. Okay, well, I was born at a very young age in Baltimore, Maryland, where I grew up. And I'll tell you what, I don't know if I could really attribute much of my upbringing to becoming a dating coach later on, because, man, I had absolutely no at all natural skill with women. I remember changing schools when I was in 7th grade. And a couple of the girls started giving me attention, and I just told them I thought they were making fun of me and mocking me, and that they couldn't possibly really like me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that became a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the girls all started making fun of me. I remember my English teacher pulling me aside going, hey, I don't know what your problem is, Scot, but these girls like you. You should kind of relax and have fun. And it still went completely over my head. So finally around 10th grade, just basically because I went to the beach with my family, as people in Baltimore do. We all go to Ocean City, Maryland in the summer. Some chick literally pulled me off the beach when it was getting dark and said, kiss me. I mean, one of those dream moments for a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I finally, I got a 2x4 upside the head, as I like to say. And I said, wow, you know what? Girls may actually sort of like me. And things started to turn there. And, started dating a few girls. But by no means was I born to be a natural when I was younger. I think all that came much later.
I have to ask you something. Why did you assume, why was that your first thought that these girls wouldn't have been into you?
Oh, I think I just had horrible self-esteem. Because I didn't have a whole lot of social skill when I was younger. So I did get made fun of some by kids and picked on a little bit. And I just got so used to it, I think. So another thing was I was not from a very rich family, but my parents had managed to get me a scholarship to some highfalutin private school. which I later got kicked out of. Something people don't know, that I got kicked out of private school for behavior. But ultimately, you know, going to this school and being confronted with some of the richest kids in the whole city, and just feeling like, you know, I come from a normal family. It just made me a lot more intimidated than probably I would have even been had I gone there, you know, with rich parents or something. You know what I mean?
Do you think that you getting kicked out of private school was an act of self-sabotage just because you didn't feel comfortable there to begin with?
I think it very much was. I wanted to go back to public school. And, you know, there were some other creepy things that went on at that school. But ultimately, I very much wanted out of that school. I've never felt at home in that environment. And even these days, as an adult, Frank, I'm not much into social snobbery. I'm very down to earth, so I never really fit into a situation like that. But yeah, I mean, as far as it pertains to getting better with women, it did nothing for me to be at that school either. You know what I mean?
I would still point out, though, that getting yourself kicked out of school, although on the surface seems like a bad thing, still required you to take a certain amount of action for yourself. It required you to decide, okay, I don't want to be here, and I'm going to take steps to ensure that I'm not going to be here anymore. Don't you think that determination, for lack of a better term, factors into what you teach now?
You know, I've never really thought about it that way, but you bring up an intriguing point, because obviously I made the decision to act up and get kicked out of private school, and I never regretted that decision. Matter of fact, by the time I got out of there, I was in 10th grade, and the last 2 years of school were the best 2 years for me. And, you know, things turned out right with my education, with or without that private school. And I do think you're very right. You know, being able to stand up for one's own destiny and make one's own choices, with or without the blessing of one's parents, I think that did make a difference. And you're very right. It might have set me up for a much more independent future. Ironic, though, isn't it?
I think it's absolutely ironic. Just from hearing the story as an outsider, the only thing I could think of is if I was in that situation and my parents were able to get me to a private school and then I drop out, or I should say get kicked out, I know my parents would have just, you know, they would have been in mourning for something like that. When I was in college, I had dropped out of pure and applied sciences and chose to pursue a career in the creative arts field. And that alone was difficult for my parents to deal with. So I can't even imagine the turmoil you must have gone through with your own family.
Well, I think towards the end there, you know, I was so not enjoying the whole experience that I think they basically capitulated.
Okay.
They were like, okay, you know, fair enough. And I didn't do anything heinous, really, to get kicked out. I basically just was a brat, and ultimately they knew I didn't want to be there anymore, so they called my parents in and said, look, you know, we don't have room in these halls for students who don't want to be here, you know, looking down their nose at everybody. And I remember that meeting where I just basically shrugged my shoulders and said, yep, he's basically telling the truth, you know, and that was pretty much the end of it for me right there.
Do you think that even back then you were coming from a place of strength?
Well, I didn't feel very empowered at that age, you know, because of all the social difficulties. And, you know, when I say social difficulties, I think everybody in 7th or 8th grade doesn't exactly have social skill figured out. The guys who do, the kids who are just naturally gifted socially, of course, they're the ones who attract all the girls. You know, the ones who are bold and confident. You really see, you know, if you want a microcosmic view of how confidence affects the female species, just go to a 7th grade classroom. And there'll be 3 kids in the whole 7th grade who's got this down early, and the girls they're on the girls' minds all the time. You know, the girls are writing the little boys' names on their notebook. And it's never the best-looking kid or the most talented kid. It's always the most confident kid, because it's just such a rare commodity when you're that age. And you're going through pre-adolescence and those kind of awkward stages. To be that kind of kid is just amazing to the little girls. So
I got to ask you something here.
Sure.
I got to ask you something. Do you really think that confidence plays that big a factor for that age group, and not, say, status, being the best-looking kid, being the one with a lot of influence?
Well, I think as far as influence socially, a lot of what you're talking about follows logically from being a confident kid.
Okay.
You know, nobody in 7th grade, for example, has been playing basketball for 10 years. You know, they've all been through Little League, and let's say if you're a baseball player and you've played T-ball when you're in 1st grade, by the time you get to 6th or 7th grade, you know, you've played some baseball, but some of the other kids have too. Nobody is being scouted by the pros at that point. Everybody's got a little bit more to learn, a little bit more strength to be had. But the kid who looks at a pitcher and says, I can hit this baseball, you know, or is in basketball and looks to the kid from the other middle school across the court going, you can't guard me. That's already the kid who's going to have the confidence.
Okay.
I can give you another example.
Please.
One of our vices, Emily and I, is we like to go BMX racing. It makes us feel like a kid again, but obviously there's a lot of kids involved. You know, they have an old guy class, and it's a lot of fun to go play in the dirt. But one of the most amazing things is where we live, we have a lot of nationally ranked kids who race in that sport. All of those kids are like, you know, from the age of about 7 on, could be poster children for David D'Angelo Cocky Funny. I mean, they really could. You know, you have a kid who has a number plate with a national, you know, logo on it, and it says 3 on it. And this kid is the 3rd fastest 12-year-old in the entire country. A kid like that, invariably, could be the CEO of a major company at age 12. It's almost like the same thing as when a kid beats leukemia, and he's faced down death at an incredibly early age in 1. You just can't stop the kid. It's like the true definition of unstoppable confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. At the young age, those kids, they're amazing. And the confidence just breeds so much. Because, see, when you're confident, then you can start building all those other skills you need at an early age to really flourish socially. And you learn how to be cool. And once, you know, you get over yourself, as it were, and realize, hey, look, you know, I'm really good at this. Some of these kids even, it's hard to do when you're 7 or 8. You know, they basically just look at, you know, a kid who's 16 years old and number 3 in the world going, I'm going to pull you down the first straight, and with a straight face, you know, because he's 7. And, you know, his number says 2 and the 15-year-old says 3. So the 7-year-old logically, or I guess illogically, concludes he's going to beat the kid. You know, that's really charming. But later, what that confidence morphs into is just genuine coolness, which to me is I'm confident and I know I can succeed, but I don't need to make you look worse to make myself look better. When I walk into the room, I'm going to greet those around me and empower those around me so they feel cooler by being around me. I think that's pretty much the yardstick by which a really cool person can be measured by. And that comes from that confidence. That comes from a history, a heritage in one's life of winning. You know what I mean?
Okay. So we talked about you growing up, you not thinking that girls were into you. Finally, that one girl takes you aside at the beach, says, kiss me.
Yeah.
Did you kiss her?
Yeah, you know what is really, really funny, Frank? The first time I ever kissed a girl, I got to 3rd base with her, and it happened within about 7 minutes. So all these guys who sell PUA books on how, you know, you can get in a girl's pants in 10 minutes, I know it's true because I did it the first time I ever kissed a girl when I was 15. I'm not going to say I did it with any skill, but that's exactly what happened. And it's kind of funny, but that was a very empowering experience for me.
And did everything change from that one incident?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely.
What was the biggest change that you noticed from that event?
I think I was trusting and believing, you know, even at that age. And it's funny because you're bringing up things I've never thought of as having influenced the way I think and teach now. But I think this really, really does. And what ended up changing was I went from thinking, you know, I don't think girls are really going to like me. You know, I'm not really very good at sports. I've always kind of been bred to be a brain instead of a jock. And, you know, parents just don't understand how that just kicks your butt socially. And I got to the point where I was like, wait a minute, this girl went out of her way to show me that, you know, she wanted literally my hands all over her and wanted to be kissed. Maybe that could happen again. Maybe there's other girls like her. And the funny part, Frank, is nowadays I teach guys, don't let the opinion of one woman shape your entire frame. In other words, if you aren't very good at approaching and you get up every ounce of nerve to actually go approach a woman, you get over the approach anxiety and you go talk to her, and she says, what a little chump, get away from me. Some guys may say, wow, I'm a little chump. Women do hate me. I've always been right. I should have never, ever even tried. And they can go decades without ever talking to another woman. And all they ever got was one woman's opinion. Meanwhile, the same guy could go up to another woman and get his verve up and go talk to this woman and say, look, I saw you from across the room, pick an opener, right? And the woman goes, wow, you know, I've been looking at you all night trying to get your attention. I thought you'd never talk to me. And the guy goes, oh my gosh, women love me. I've been so stupid my whole life for being so shy and being so ashamed to go approach women. They all love me, right? And yeah, that's going to be a tremendous empowerment experience for that guy, but both of those frames are based from logical fallacy because you're dealing with one opinion from one person. But see, it's funny because that one opinion I got from that little girl back when I was, 14, told me something that was healthy, right? And it literally, that one positive experience washed away some self-imposed negative experience. You see what I mean?
Let's fast forward to when you were about, let's say, 18, 3 years from that incident. What was your life with women then, and what were you doing in your non-dating life?
Well, what I did when I was 18 is I went away to college, which if you're listening and still in high school, man, get away from your parents and see if you can go out of town to college. You know, even if it's just an hour and a half, 2 hours drive by car to get to your college. If you have the means to be able to go away to college, do it. But my frame of mind when I went away to college was, well, to be completely forthright, I had started getting okay with women because when I was a senior in high school, one of the cutest girls in school told her friend to tell me that, you know, she liked me. And of course, I never would have had, even at that point, I never would have had the guts to ask her out. So that was kind of another turning point experience that empowered me more. And, you know, I got major one-itis with that chick. You know, don't believe anybody who tells you one-itis only happens before you get her attracted. I blew it, you know. I became too obsessed, and she started thinking, well, I think this guy, you know, I've got him wrapped a little too tight. I'm going to cut him loose. So she broke up with me. But because I had the experience of having dated her for a while, I went to the next girl I thought was attractive and said, okay, well, she and I broke up. Let's you and I go out. And the girl goes, okay. You know, the whole concept of a woman responding so powerfully to confident leadership that she'll just basically do as you say, you know, as long as you got her best interest in heart, right? And so I dated her for the rest of the school year. And of course, I went away to college, and like any self-respecting college freshman, I got rid of all the high school girls in my life. Right? And I went to college pretty much on a high, saying, you know, I'm just going to get to know girls and women, I guess you can call them, once they hit 18, right? And start really doing well. And I went to a small private college, and fortunately for a guy like me, the nature of that college was such that it was replete with guys with no social skill. It was kind of like a brainiac college. More girls than guys, like 70-30, which is awesome. And I started meeting girls, but I started making mistakes because I needed that. What I'd always missed, and what I always, even today, tell guys they ought to do, is go meet and be in a potentially romantic situation with as many women as you possibly can. Go out and date a whole lot of women, because that way you start realizing the commonalities between how women think as opposed to how people think in general. And I know that kind of sounds deep, but a lot of guys automatically assume women are a certain way. They're all a certain way. and they're all very different than us guys. But when you start meeting women, you start realizing that people are very different, but the common threads that make women women, you can start putting your finger on them, and that what I call chick whispering, of course, that kind of concept of learning how to understand women, despite us guys having been told our whole life that it's pretty much impossible and women are a total enigma. Once you start learning more about what women are actually like, you can start building skill towards relating with them and trusting how your masculinity is going to affect a woman. That was what I pretty much started working through in my college years, that I would go on dates with girls and women and have a good time. And I started learning a little bit more about what I liked, what I didn't like from women, but I still made so many mistakes, you know. And, you know, that's part of what it's all about. You live and you learn, right?
I have two questions for you. The first one is, what would you say to a guy who's fairly young, we'll say in his early 20s, maybe is struggling with some social intelligence, and he's in a long-term relationship with a girl, maybe been dating her for 2 or 3 years, not sure if he wants to marry her. Would you tell him that he should break up and date as many women as possible, or would you encourage him to stick out that relationship where he's being faithful and monogamous with a girl in an exclusive relationship?
Well, you know, it's funny because I was having this exact conversation with a guy I'm coaching today. Men think of themselves as men for not quitting. They think it's a universally masculine trait to just, you know, stick it out no matter how tough it gets. And if you're quit, you know, that's an insult to your maleness. Well, there's a difference between quitting and being logical. And one of the ways I think guys get themselves into being P-whipped in today's culture, when they really thought, it kind of happens without them even figuring it out, it happened, is they go, look, I've got this woman and I'm going to make it work. You know, we're showing there's all these red flags, you know, she's not treating me with a whole lot of respect, but, you know, I'm not going to let this woman pwn me like this. I'm going to stand up, I'm going to become a man, and I'm going to make sure this works, by God. When in reality, the woman was no good for him. He really wasn't much attracted to her anymore, and they should have broken up months ago. I'm sure you see this. I see it all the time.
100%.
Yeah. But because the guy said, I'm no quitter, he ends up settling. I think a guy can really not be completely sure whether he's settling or not until he dates a lot of women, knows what he wants from a woman, and has dated enough women to recognize, even if he wants a monogamous relationship, which isn't for everybody, and which is a sliding scale depending on where they are in their life, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think once a guy realizes that that's what he wants, he has to have the wherewithal to know he's making the right choice, and that only comes from experience. But I would tell that guy who's in that situation, look, evaluate what it is you want. Don't stay in a relationship because you're afraid of the drama of breaking up either, because most women can handle that sort of thing much better than we give them credit for. Usually the woman knows things are just as bad as you think they are, even if she's got her head in the sand. So that all is very, very important. But yeah, I see a lot of guys sticking things out when they shouldn't be.
All right, I got one more question to you before we have to go to a commercial break. Earlier in this interview, you talked about the myths, the idea that men are constantly taught, you'll never understand women, don't even try.
Yeah.
And I know that I had to face demystifying women in this regard. So I'd like to hear from you. What was it that made you say, you know what, there is a way to understand women, I just have to find it? What was that moment for you where you said, that answer of I'll never understand them is just not acceptable?
I think when I started seeing common threads from dating a lot of women, and you know, what I'm talking about here happened years later, when I was dating again in my 30s. I got smart and said, wait a second, I'm not just going to believe the memes that I've been told my whole life. You know, the standard mantras of, you know, here's the way dating is, here's the way, you know, women are. I'm going to figure out what the truth is, because Hollywood may not be telling me the truth. And, of course, you know, just like very, very similar, you and I have a similar experience, Frank, that we went from a place where we were getting mediocre at best success with women. And, you know, it's probably useful here to say that I regressed in my confidence and my skill with women due to a very difficult marriage, which is well documented out elsewhere. You know, so I was coming from a place similar to you where I want to get better at this. And did a lot of studying, immersed myself in the studying of how to get better with women, but also how to understand women. In my mind, it was like, look, if I want to learn how to play basketball, I need to learn the rules of the game. I can't just learn how to I can't learn how to dribble between my legs and behind my back and expect to know how to play basketball. And that outlook, when I got in front of women, I was wanting to figure out what women are really like. And I came to this stunning conclusion that it's not that difficult to understand them. Now, you won't always fully understand them, but there are certain things that women will do predictably, just like there's certain things men will do predictably. Just like men don't like to quit and men don't like change much. Women will not respond if they have a feeling of insecurity about who you are and what you're about. You know, online, for example. If there's anything creepy about your online profile, women are going to go, well, you know what, I'm not going to compromise myself. When a woman looks at an online profile, she wants to see your pictures look like the guy who wrote the profile in her mind. And that the email, the first email you wrote the woman, is kind of like the movie trailer to the movie that is your profile. Everything matches up. You know what I mean? And see, when you get in front of a woman and you start looking at the way they operate and you say, well, gee, you know, when I drove like a maniac, she wasn't impressed and got really nervous. But when I drove like a normal guy, she let me kiss her at the end of the date. You start putting two and two together. Like, if you start saying to a woman, I'm not going to really pressure her to kiss me or do anything physical. I'm just going to pretend I'm going to be completely comfortable with the fact that nothing physical is going to happen at the end of this date. All of a sudden, she practically hijacked the first kiss because she trusts you. Whereas, you know, if you're trying to get your paws all over her, they generally get skittish. I started figuring all this stuff out. And when you start putting two and two together, it's like, women want you to make them feel safe. And it's not like you need to beat up all these guys who are trying to, you know, to rob you and pillage you all night. It's not about being a thug. It's about helping that woman feel secure in your presence, like everything will be okay. The way I put it is, you got to be able to hug a woman, hold her, and tell her everything's going to be okay, and have her believe you. You're talking about the ultimate way to, quote-unquote, escalate Kino. There you go.
All right. You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles. We'll be back right after this.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes a perfect gift. The book, written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
From Loser to Seducer is the story of Frank B. Kermit. This book marks the triumph of a nice guy over most of his inner demons. This includes going from being a loser to managing 5 lovers at the same time, his first Valentine's date with 2 women at the same time, and getting back the one that got away. Want to learn how you can change your life? Buy this book at franktalks.com.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the book, I'm a Man, That's My Job, The Philosophy of a Seducer. Ladies, have you ever wondered where all the real men have gone? Do you turn to your women friends because you cannot find a true man in your life? Do you want the man in your life to step up and know what it means to be a man that can make you feel like the woman that you are? Are you tired of mothering the men you date? Give these boys the gift of manhood. The book, I'm a Man, That's My Job, teaches men to create their own seduction persona, personal inner game, and how to take the lead in a relationship. Buy this book now at franktalks.com.
You're listening to Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles. I'm Frank because I have to be. In studio today with Mr. Scot McKay. How you doing there, Scott?
Doing great, man. Ready for action.
All right. Now, in the last interview segment, you briefly talked about a marriage that you were involved in, where it sounds like you started off very strong. Sounds like it was a decent relationship at the beginning. And then the relationship deteriorated over time, and by the end of it, you were no longer the man that you used to be, and you had to build yourself up again. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience without having to go into too much detail, and how you think it relates to your ability today to work with guys as a dating coach?
Well, I'll tell you, I found myself in a town that wasn't the biggest metro area working with disadvantaged kids. I used to work with gang kids. So I was in a town in the southwest part of the United States that, wasn't exactly a metropolis, but was along the Mexican border. And I got to be 28 years old, and I said, that phrase, which is the ultimate kiss of death for both men and women alike, which is, it's time for me to get married. I need to be married just because I'm at the age where I should be, right? I mean, this is a poisonous thought, right?
You don't think
that? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You don't think though that at some point age does factor in, at least for women, in terms of a biological clock?
I think it most certainly can. But at age 28, what I wouldn't realize, what I couldn't see in a crystal ball, was that I would be divorced again at age 36, or divorced at age 36, and that I would be able to completely rebuild my dating life, choose a great woman, and not only marry her, but have a son by the time I was 40. Or actually just after my 41st birthday, which is how old I am now. So, in reality, I didn't meet that woman until I was 38. I could have been single till 38, and it would have been fine. You see what I mean?
Yeah, but don't you think that part of the reason that you can have such a strong relationship now with your current wife is because of the experiences you had in the past, including the failed marriage?
Yeah, I think at one level, definitely. For sure, I think when you're 28 and you say to yourself, I'm going to get married to the woman who's in front of me right now because she likes me, she seems like someone I could get along with, and it's time for me to get married, I still would maintain that's a wrong-headed reason to get married. And that most people panic at an age that's a lot younger than they should be panicking at. We just had a guy who I coach who's getting married for the first time at 44, and he's planning a family. And, I think things will go well for him. But I think whenever you're in a mindset that you're letting outside forces that you perceive control you rather than making your own decisions, I think you get in a position where you're going to settle for the wrong person. And I think in many ways that's what I did. Because she was very beautiful, and she was very fun to hang out with. She was very adventurous, She was willing to go out and have a good time in all the good ways, And what I didn't see, because I chose not to, were the red flags that said she was going to probably be just a little bit less than stable as we got on. And the horrifying part is I decided, okay, well, I'm going to marry her anyway because I need to be married. I want to start a family, etc. And we got married, and within 6 hours of our marriage, she was a completely different person and stayed that way. And I'm not the first guy I've ever had this. I've seen this happen to. So, yeah, that threw me for a loop to begin with. And again, I said, okay, well, based on what I happen to believe about how marriages should work, I don't believe in divorce. So, this has got to be some kind of weird aftershock effect. And I kind of waited out her settling down from that and becoming the person I always knew she was, and weeks turned into months and it wasn't happening, and then suddenly it's like, wait a minute, I can't just go annul this. I'm sort of stuck, and now I'm in a marriage where I'm not happy, but I'm going to not quit. I'm not going to be the quitter, and I'm going to look around me and say, look, there's other guys who got it a lot worse than I do, so I'm just going to, make lemonade with the lemons, right?
Uh-huh.
That was all a mistake, and I don't want to make it out as my ex-wife was a bad person. The truth of the matter is she was diagnosed with an illness that I can't blame her for. And just like I couldn't blame someone for being diabetic, I can't blame her for being diagnosed with a severe mental illness. But she was already showing signs of the progression of that very shortly after we got married.
Do you still have any contact with her? Are you still friends today?
Well, she's the mother of my daughter. You were going to ask about, or you did ask about how this shaped who I am today and how I teach. There's no way to be angry at someone or to harbor resentment against someone who's got a mental illness and is living in a different reality. But as a man who likes to think in terms of either things are or they aren't, and trying to come to logical conclusions of things, I still try to fall into the trap sometimes of reasoning with a woman who cannot be reasoned with. I mean, she has a firmly held belief in stuff that just isn't based in your reality and mine. And, it's just like anything else that's neurological, even like a Parkinson's disease or an Alzheimer's. She has good days and bad days. And I just have made the decision within the past few years, I'm not going to let her get me upset. I'm not going to get frustrated. I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to let her own me like that. And she'll go through days where she's perfectly nice to me. By the way, she's the mother of my daughter, so yes, I have ongoing contact with her. And, sometimes she's perfectly cooperative. Other times she just wants to throw a roadblock in there for completely irrational reasons. And what that means is I just have to work around it. But I'm not going to let it negatively affect my frame of mind anymore.
I see a common thread here. You said earlier in this interview that you worked with a lot of troubled youth, gang kids, and so on. And I see the way you're dealing with now your ex. How important, and I think this applies to our industry as well, how important is the topic of forgiveness? Because someone going through what you went through, I have to believe that a number of men would be harboring a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, becoming misogynistic. And what I'm hearing from you is a very forgiving source. And I'm wondering, was that because of the work you were doing with troubled youth, where you had to be very forgiving? Is that something that you were raised with? Where do you think the forgiveness comes from? And do you think that it's a necessary element for a man to come from a position of strength?
You have two very similar but different facets of that conversation. I want to cover both of them. First of all, the whole concept of working with the gang kids. Gang kids are trained in the art of manipulation. They're masters at it. And they can look you in the eye and tell you one thing when something else is the truth, and they think they're doing what's right in that situation. So I've said this before, I've got a BS detector that would make Judge Judy jealous, basically. I can read people's intentions really, really well at this point. And when I was married to my ex-wife, my first clue that she wasn't in our reality was there was no rhyme or reason to reading her intentions. And so when she would say I'm a perfectly decent guy one day and then change literally within the next sentence to me being basically the worst guy who ever lived, I learned to say, okay, look, I I can't hitch my wagon to either one of those sentiments.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about forgiveness. Actually, she ended up divorcing me. In my mind, because I didn't believe in divorce, I would have sacrificed personal happiness and perhaps personal safety to keep my family together and not have my daughter be from a broken home. But I've also forgiven myself because I did what I could and she still left. And like I said, I also made the conscious decision where I can't harbor resentment because she's got an illness. And you bring up an interesting point, because even if she was just, even if she'd never been diagnosed with an illness that I could hang my hat on and say, okay, well, there's the reason I can forgive her, I probably still should have and would have found a reason to forgive her. And that all harkens back to what we talked about right at the outset, Frank, which is you can't take the opinion of one person. You can't take how one person is and build and throw a blanket over that as pertaining to the entire gender. It can't be done. You can't do that for your own self-preservation. But see, having been worn down through this marriage for 7 years, I started believing I wasn't a very good guy. It's like Chinese water torture. And I started thinking, wow, because I'm looking around saying, okay, some guys got it worse than I do, it was my own protection mechanism psychologically to say, okay, she's not that bad. Other guys must have women just like her in private. So how I was insulating myself and insulating my emotions and my feelings to buck up and be a man in that relationship, even though she was wearing me down, Once the divorce finally happened, and by the way, she put as her reason for divorce, she said it was the cumulative effect of all the small things he did to me and was going to do to me. So even in the midst of her pain, she was, because she was literally deciding that I was doing things that it was like being falsely accused of things you never did and going to jail for it day after day after day. You come home with $100 worth of groceries after 40 minutes, and I must have been sleeping with my girlfriend. And there's no changing her mind. She's got this firmly held belief in the impossible. That's what daily life was like. Well, she did not ever forgive me for anything. Symptom. You get into a minor argument. She brings up something that happened 3 years ago in her mind that she's never brought up before. It's just been simmering in there for 3 years, and she played that card when she felt it was time. So long ago in most cases that I don't even remember the situation. I'm not even sure if there were mythical invented in her mind or whether something really, really precipitated the feeling and she's just been harboring it. But that is a clear sign of zero forgiveness. And I said, okay, well, I'm not going to believe that all women are terrible. Now, I've got other women in my life in various other roles I know aren't crazy. Being crazy is not a female trait. And I'm going to make a conscious decision to believe that there are women out there who are emotionally stable. I'm just going to do it. Because there's no other option. Granted, when I first got divorced, I dealt with all the things that recently divorced guys do. Like, the first time you go out on a date, you're sure you're cheating on your wife. It just feels so bizarre. You shouldn't be dating. That was never supposed to happen again. Well, I ended up, because I believe that crazy was sort of a norm, I started seeking out women that I was comfortable with who all turned out being on vitamin P or Xanax or something like that and being emotionally unstable. Some people may say, well, yeah, that's the law of attraction. I think it was male leadership. I think women follow your leadership, and when you expect them to act out like that, you will not only draw those women who say, okay, this guy's going to expect me to act out and I'm going to feel safe in this environment. See, it's kind of this warped vision of here's a guy who makes me feel safe. I started attracting woman after woman, like clockwork, who was just really not stable. I don't want to say stark raving nuts, but that's what wants to fall out of my mouth. Mm-hmm. As soon as I said, wait, this really is, what's crazy about this is I'm letting it go on. And I reminded myself, women are not nuts. There are stable women out there, and from now on I'm going to make a conscious decision to realize that and only stick to my guns and pre-evaluate women from a perspective of, is she going to be someone I can get along with and who's going to be reasonable. And I kid you not, Frank, out of the next 100 women I dated, I think one of them was on an antidepressant. One.
So you made a conscious effort to date a healthier type of woman.
Yes. I put it on my list of criteria, and I lived by it. And I made that list of criteria before I started dating, so I didn't let my judgment get clouded after I'd already met someone who I thought was hot.
Got a question for you here. Did you at any time look to yourself and say, you know what, yeah, I've dated all these crazy women, but there was one common element in every single one of those relationships, and that was you?
Yes, absolutely.
And when you came to that realization, what was that the motivating factor for you to say, I'm never going to allow myself to do this again? Or did you beat yourself up for it?
Oh, I don't think I beat myself up for it. I think I made the change. I calibrated. Here's an amazing thing. I think guys here, women respond to leadership. But I've almost made it my number one soapbox lately because it's so powerful.
Uh-huh.
Women respond to leadership from you in ways you don't even ever guess. And it is so powerful. You can go and be out in public. Let's say you go to the store. You see a woman with a bag of groceries. And for some reason, I guess the automatic door's down and she's got to open a door, right? If you say to that woman, hey, is it okay if I get the door for you? Would you like for me to get the door for you? She might go, no, I got it, right? And you're going to go, okay, well, liberated woman. If you say to that woman, stop, let me get the door for you, she'll stop and look at you and wait for you to get the door.
Yep.
Now, are you a controlling jerk? No, you're leading. A guy asked me, I've got this new opener I want to go use on cold approaches. What do you think of it? I didn't get past the first line. The first line of the cold approach that he was building was, I'm sorry for bothering you, bud. The first thing the woman's going to say, because you've led her to believe it, is, yeah, you are bothering me. That's the subtlety of it. If you say to a woman, I only deal with women, if you say to yourself, I only deal with women who are emotionally stable, and you look at that woman and you're expecting emotional stability from her, I don't know if you can make an emotionally unstable woman stable, but you sure can make sure that they get the message and know where they're not going to be able to work their craft. Meanwhile, it's almost like when you get online and you say to a woman, hey, you know what, I need a couple more pictures from you. And she goes, okay, here's a couple more pictures. That's a good sign because, she's not ashamed of how she looks and she's representing herself perfectly well. So why would she argue it? Meanwhile, if the woman goes, oh, I don't know, I think you're being kind of shallow. Don't you think you should just meet me and see what's in my heart? She probably is ashamed of how she looks and she may disappoint you in real life. And I, for one, believe that it's perfectly okay for a man to want a woman who looks good to himself. There's no shame in that. That's how we're wired. If you say, like in an online profile, look, I really want a woman who's got it together. I don't want to play games, which of course is what everybody says. So you have to come up with something better than that, which is, I want a woman who is emotionally stable. You can even say that in your profile. And these women know when they want to ride a roller coaster. And if they look and go, well, that guy, he's just going to break up with me, they'll actually stay away. Whereas, shockingly, women who are stable are also fed up with mentally unstable women. They deal with them at work. They may have a few in their family. A woman will go, my goodness, here's a guy who's going to appreciate me. And she'll go out with you. So you are leading, even as you're making the decision to not settle for what you want. It happens that early. You see what I mean?
See what you mean. Scott, we have to go to commercial. When we come back, we'll be talking with Scot McKay of www.deservewhatyouwant.com. And we'll be back right after this.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes the perfect gift. The book, written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the Adult Male Virgin Seminars and Telephone Consultations. If you are an adult and want to get a handle on this once and for all, you need this seminar. Being an adult male virgin can be most stigmatizing in today's society. You feel like a failure in the eyes of the mass culture around you, alienated from your male friends who all talk about their sexual conquest, and you must hide this shameful secret lest they use it against you. And the very personal pain, anguish, and despair that cannot be described by words that haunts you every moment of your life. Enough is enough. It is time for male virgins to take charge of their sex lives. Frank gives you the rules of winning in this seminar, the Adult Male Virgin Seminars and Telephone Consultations. Make your first time the best time of her life. Only available at franktalks.com. Frank helps adult boys turn into men.
Guys, does your bachelor pad look as frightening as an Elvis convention? Then you need the Pimping Your Pad seminar. Do you own a twin bed and still love your Star Wars sheets? Then you need the Pimping Your Pad seminar. Is the only source of artificial light in your bachelor pad the bare, dusty bulb hanging from the ceiling? Then you need the Pimping Your Pad seminar. Do your friends walk into your apartment and think you have been robbed? Then you need the Pimping Your Pad seminar. Do you think that minimalist means barren as the Gobi Desert? Then you need the Pimping Your Pad seminar. If your bathroom is home to a colony of anything, then you need the Pimping Your Pad seminar. The Pimping Your Pad seminar and telephone consultations, only available at franktalks.com.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles. I'm Frank because I have to be. In studio today with Mr. Scot McKay. How you doing there, Scott?
Doing great, man. Hanging in there.
All right. I want to spend the rest of this interview talking about your life as a dating coach, dating expert. I want to talk about some of the pleasures you experience doing this craft. I want to talk about some of the sacrifices you've had to make in order to live this lifestyle, a number of the obstacles you'd have to overcome, things that people normally wouldn't assume would be part of this lifestyle. And I'd like you to start off by making a comparison. I am very, very intrigued about your past work with troubled youth and what you had said about them. You know, troubled youth are expert manipulators. How does that relate, if at all, to your coaching? When a guy calls you up and he's in trouble and he's struggling, both the troubled youth and these troubled men have things in common. There's an element of their development, or there's an element of some sort of social interaction that they're missing. What can you say in terms of comparing and contrasting them? And is the means of helping one group relatable to helping the other group?
Wow, what a great question. What a great group of questions. I'm going to answer that one this way. In between my work with the gang kids and what I'm doing now, I spent many years as a manager in the IT world, climbing the corporate ladder, and I enjoyed it for quite a while because it was mentally stimulating and you make good money at it. You know, one day I woke up and said, I have no passion for this anymore. The thrill of learning about technology has run its course with me. The whole concept of going into these meetings with VPs from Fortune 500 companies and stuff, and that's gotten old. I don't have a passion for it anymore. And it really is very hollow. While I respect everybody who works any job that is for the good of society, in my mind I said I want a more hands-on approach to making a difference in people's lives. Instead of making their internet faster someday, I really just feel like I'm making AT&T rich every day. Mm-hmm. So, this is funny because it was not a hard decision. It was an easy decision made by my losing my passion for the job I was in, combined with the fact that I was dating so often it was affecting my job performance at the time. I mean, one of the dangers of a wildly successful dating life is it starts affecting your other areas of life negatively, because it's a lot like an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all of a sudden women like you, and you have all these women, and you can experience the pleasures of having a lot of very high quality women in your life, and it starts taking its toll on your health, on your diet, and yes, on your job performance. So I was in a very high pressure job and not performing as well, partly because of the pressures self-imposed by my dating life, but also because I'd lost passion. Again, I should have quit that a long time ago, but the masculine, I don't want to be a quitter impulse in me kept me there, when really my passion was turned to something else. And what that passion was turned to was, my goodness, I've gone from having this devastating effect in my life caused by divorce to really crawling out of that mud pit and experiencing a wildly successful dating life with lots of women. And I decided I wanted to share that with other guys. So a lot of times guys look at me and they go, well, he's married, you know, he doesn't have any game, or, you know, he doesn't have anything to show. Well, I'll tell you what, one of the reasons I took so long to get at this is because I was spending so much time with the women, I don't think I would have had time to write a book. You know, I've heard lots of other guys say that too. It had to be almost after I had found the logical fulfillment to the dating life in terms that I was looking for, where I had the time to now go and partner with other people. So when guys call me to answer the other part of your question, I'm gonna answer that in a way I'm not sure you expect, but it's kind of true now that I think about it. I'm not so sure that the guys who call me, and you know, we have women who call too. Emily and I work with both men and women freely because we respect the needs and challenges of both. When the people call, we have this knack for having extremely sharp people call us. You know, we don't get guys who are just socially inept. We get guys who are like Harvard graduates and doctors and, you know, high-ranking military officers. And actually, I've got other dating gurus who consider me their coach. You know, so I got some very sharp people. Typically what they're saying is, okay, here's what I want. I want to go from good to great. And that's kind of become our niche. And while you were asking the question, well, here's what occurred to me, Frank. Just like I would deal with kids who had personal troubles, I'm dealing mostly with people who mean well, who are ending up dating people with personal troubles and not wanting to hurt them, and they're being manipulated, you know, and they're being done wrong. And they want to end that pattern and start dating people who are high quality. And they want to believe that they're high enough quality to date those kind of people. So yeah, it's kind of the mirror image. It's like the photonegative image of it. But that is typically how it goes. Now, do we get some people who email or call who have very genuine issues they need to work through? Of course. You know, we know our limits in that area, but for the most part, the vast majority of people who we come in contact with are actually in situations where they need to learn how to deserve what they want because they already should be. You know what I mean? So yeah, that experience definitely comes into it. And of course, everything I've learned, even my educational background, was meant to prepare me for that career, not for the IT career. The IT career was almost accidental. So, you know, my educational background, where my passion lies, all that experience of knowing what manipulation looks like, that does absolutely enter into the effectiveness of what we do today.
Something that you had mentioned, you know, in this segment of the interview, you mentioned how the fact that you're married is an obstacle to people thinking that you're credible as a dating coach. Right. Usually the image that people have in their minds of a dating coach is someone who is still dating, not necessarily someone who's married. And how do you deal with that particular obstacle when people say, well, what can you teach me about dating? You're married, and I think that there's a negative association of a married man giving dating advice. How do you handle that?
Well, first of all, I haven't stopped dating. If I stop dating, my wife is going to be upset.
Are you saying you date people outside your marriage, or are you saying?
Oh, no. We date each other. We do come from a perspective of monogamy. That's what's right for us. But we still do date, and I still, one of the things that always kind of interests me is people will unsubscribe from my newsletter, and they'll say, I found this great woman, I don't need your newsletter anymore. Thank you for all your help, you've changed my life. And I feel like reaching through the computer monitor and going, no, keep subscribed, because now you're really going to need what we're talking about, because we talk a lot about relationship management and continuing to deserve what you want, and it's kind of immaterial whether you're dating or whether you're married. I've got married guys who buy Virtuosity, multiple, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like we've got a lot of women on the list for guys because they want to know what it means to be a great man so they can start looking for Mr. Right, because that's what I'm teaching guys how to be. I think the whole concept of being married, is there's this thing in the seduction community which says, well, if you're married, then the girl got what she wanted and you cut your balls off and you're just going to be used for the rest of your life. Well, that's very true if you're a sex-focused guy who sees women as a means for sexual fulfillment only. And all of a sudden you've been tied down by one and you can't experience sexual variety anymore. Then I would fully agree with that sentiment. But see, I believe that there's a lot more life has to offer than just quote-unquote getting the lay. And that's controversial to some guys because it's so very different than what's being taught, because, it doesn't work well for marketing. Two hot buttons for marketing are lust and quick fix. And even guys who say, I really just want a great girlfriend and some stability in my life, will end up falling for that marketing. The reality, though, is a lot of guys are saying, well, wait a minute, I really do want one great woman. I want to have a history. I don't want this drama in my life. I want someone I can trust. I want to go on trips with her. I want to come home and share those memories. I want her to be there for me when I come home from work and hand me a beer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to have someone I can relate to, someone who I know what's going on under there. I want to know I'm going to be able to have sex whenever I want to have sex. I mean, he's, wearing the pants in the relationship. And here's one. I want a kid. I want a family. I want a legacy. Recently I saw a dating guru who claims that he's got a study that says the number one things guys regret on their deathbed is that they didn't have enough sex with women. I would challenge that assumption. I don't think guys lay on their deathbed and go, wow, I just didn't get laid enough. I think they go, I didn't accomplish my life purpose. I didn't do enough to care about the people who mattered the most. I think guys are going to have more depth than that. Yeah, is sex important? Of course it is. But you got to understand, if you're starving for sex, that's all you can think about. It's a Maslow's hierarchy thing. Once you understand that you can have sex, you start thinking, okay, well, I could have sex with all kinds of pretty women. What's under the hood? What more does a woman have to offer me than just the sexuality? Yes, she's beautiful. Yes, she's sexy. Yes, she'll do amazing acrobatics in bed. But I want more. And so that thought process that the seduction community proffers, which is, oh, no, getting married is a capitulation and a sign of non-manhood. I would say the ultimate representation of giving one's power away to a woman is to say that a woman's sexuality is a prize and mine is something just to be handed out freely. Because then the woman truly is in charge. When you're a man who says, look, I'm someone who has to be earned. And I want a woman who I deserve, and I will not settle until I get the very best. And you date women, and you know exactly what you want, and you're making your own decision, and you have options, and you have power over who you're dating. You're the one putting women in the just be friend zone when they're not measuring up. Then, when you've had that experience, and you decide, look, okay, I've dated enough of the drama, enough of the revolving door, if you will, I've had sex enough here with enough different women, I've gotten just about every type of woman I can dream of, if that was your cup of tea. You no longer are going to be having your nose pressed against the window, looking at the greener grass outside, having met this woman who's in front of you right now. The woman walks through the door, you go, that's what I've decided I want. And you test it out. and you say, okay, I've got 16 women on my Rolodex, or pick a number, right? Some guys, I think between 4 and 6 is pretty much the sweet spot for most guys. But I don't care if it's 50. You say, I got 50 women who I can call tonight, all of whom would be thrilled to go out with me, but I don't want to see them anymore. I want every night to pick this one because she's outshining the others, and I couldn't have designed this woman any better, you know, if I'd sent a purchase order to God himself, right? That's when you have absolute, utter control over your dating life. You are making your own decisions, and you're making all your decisions for the right reason. But yeah, if you're getting married because you feel like you're going to lose her if you don't get married, or you're never going to get another woman who likes you, or she's the only hot woman you've ever had like you back, then you're setting yourself up to be peewits is what you're doing. And that is the difference between what we teach and what I think is a very prevalent, you know, not ubiquitous, but a very prevalent thought process in the seduction community, that marriage is something to be ashamed of. See, I've got a son, and I've got the greatest woman I've ever met. And that's what I wanted, and that was what I got, because I deserved it that way. Does that follow logically?
Follows. That's fantastic.
Right, so if there's other guys out there who want that, then they can go and they can date multiple women now. They can even live a PUA lifestyle now, but they have to be setting themselves up to have a long view of what it is they really want. And I don't think every guy should necessarily be married. I think if you want to date multiple women for the rest of your life, that's your choice. But as long as it's what you wanted, not something that you felt socially pressured to by the seduction community, it's the right choice. But I'm all about guys being empowered. And just a little aside. When you have respect for women and you understand how to brighten a woman's day, today, I'm married, okay, to the greatest woman I've ever met. I demonstrated infield approach to a client in person today. And he said to me, my God, I wish I had all this on video because you have more game than anybody I've ever met. And I did not flirt with a single woman. I did not express sexual interest in a single woman, but I had a whole, you know, I had a whole table full of women hanging on our every word, this guy and I. Right? We basically winged for each other. Because I was interested in their input on things, and I wanted to hear what they had, and they were asking me for dating advice. And they were hanging on every word. And one of these women, I think by anybody's standards, I mean, there's something in the water here in Texas, but by anybody's standards, this woman was pretty close to a 10. She was just absolutely beautiful. And I had been teaching this guy some things. You know, we've been going over what I call a session 0 on my 10-plus coaching program, which is where we basically decide what he wants and how to get it. And I said, well, why don't we just talk to those women, and I'll show you some of the things that you're not so sure can actually play out. And the most beautiful woman in the group, she kind of was talking under her breath and mumbling a little bit. And I said, I can't hear you speaking pretty well. You're going to have to talk and enunciate, will you? And she straightened up, and she did exactly what I asked her to. Which I just finished talking to this guy about the difference between being a nice guy and a jerk versus being assertive and doing what's in everybody's best interest. He's like, man, it worked like a charm. And, you know, she was just respecting what we were saying. Her friends were all into it. But see, if you appreciate women, it doesn't matter whether she's attractive or not, or whether you have any sexual intention at all, which I didn't. You can still go talk to women, and the effect is the same. You have this leadership ability, you have this confidence that allows you to interact with women, and that doesn't change whether you're married or not. Emily and I do this together when we're out, and we make friends everywhere we go.
I got one more question for you before we have to wrap this up. Do you think that you have found your life's calling in this work? And if you have, how do you know?
Here's something that I'm sure some guys can relate to. I have had this history in my life where at any point in my adult life, I'm 41 years old now, if you would have shown me what I'm doing 5 years from now, I wouldn't have believed you. You could have said that when I was 25. You could have said that when I was 30. You could have said that when I was 20, 35, and at 40, I don't know. But if what has held true for the first part of my adult life holds true through the remainder of my career, however long I'm granted, then in 5 years from now, I'll probably be doing something that's a bold statement different than what I'm doing now. However, right now, right at this particular time, I have never felt more fulfilled by what I do. And, you know, I gave up a pretty good job in management that paid really well. And I wake up every day, you know, whenever I wake up. I mean, the challenge of this work is you have really crazy sleeping habits because you fired the boss, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I do wake up every day, I'm the first thing I want to do is go see what's going on. I'm empowered. I have to be dragged out of the house sometimes to go do something else because I'm so passionate about what I do. So, yes, this is by far the most rewarding job I've ever had, the most rewarding work I've ever done. And just getting the outpouring from people of, you know, look, what you're doing mattered. I was at this position. I can relate to what you're saying now because of something you read. And sometimes it can be one line out of one newsletter. Someone goes, man, that just hit me between the eyes. You've radically altered my process for life. Getting those, you know, having 100% satisfaction from 10 plus programs across the board says to me, I'm in the right place. I'm doing the right thing. And what I will do will matter in the lives of people and leave a lasting mark. That's a positive one. Yeah, that says to me that I'm doing the right thing. I think the proof is in the proverbial pudding. How's that for alliteration? And when you're doing what you're passionate about and it is leaving a lasting positive mark on the world around you, then I think you're in a pretty good place.
Scott, we have come to the end of this terrific interview. I'd like to give you this opportunity to share with our listeners some contact information. Anything from your website address, your email, your phone number, and any particular products you think they should know about. So you've got the floor.
Well, I do think, my name is not quite as synonymous with dating advice just yet as, say, a Mystery or a David D'Angelo. So I'm sure a lot of the guys listening are just now getting acquainted with me for the first time through this interview, and I'd love to get acquainted with them. I'd love to know you're out there. So definitely sign up for my free newsletter. And I think Frank mentioned deservewhatyouwant.com. A much cleaner way to get that job done would be to go to thechickwhisperer.com. And the Chick Whisperer is also a free podcast for men that we do. We publish it irregularly, but kind of like this. It's sort of comes off as a radio show. I have guests that co-host with me. And you can get that for free from iTunes as The Chick Whisperer. And that's another free resource. I also have a blog, which you can get to from the main site at deservewhatyouwant.com, where I give videos and I update that regularly with lots of free information. All the previous newsletters are archived. You can actually look for my name at easyarticles.com and find over 100 articles. And all of that, of course, won't cost you a dime. And I'm happy to offer that to everybody out there. I also have some free reports and different audio programs that I have out there that don't cost a dime. And also, you can call me up, and the numbers are all on my website, or you can email me. And I will answer, unless the email somehow slips through the cyber cracks, I will answer every email that comes to me. I'm not going to get in an ivory tower and tell you that I'm that busy that I don't answer emails. Sure, I answer a few hundred a day, but I will answer every email that comes to me that has good positive intent. So you can write me at smckay, or let's just make it Scott, SCOT, at datetoorder.com, datetoorder.com. And another thing, since I am a dating coach rather than an internet marketer who sells dating products primarily, I do encourage people to pick up the phone or Skype me on Scot McKay, and I'll talk to you for 10, 15 minutes and see if it's a good fit for me to be someone, that you can put to work to make you be in a position where you're going to get what you want out of your dating life instead of continuing the cycle of settling. And, just like, Frank, you were on my flagship product, Virtuosity, and had just a fantastic session on there. If you want to check out Virtuosity and contribute to the cause, it's a bonanza of stuff, over 70 hours, and you can see that from the website also, deservewhatyowant.com. You can click on the banner for that, and I encourage you to do that. So, would be very, very happy to hear from the guys in your audience, and women too.
Scott, it's been absolutely great having you on the show. I sincerely hope that you'll come and visit us again at Frank Talks. And, wow, I'm still just blown away because we got a lot of really personal information from you. A lot more than I was expecting. And I really feel that more than ever, you're going to come across as a true human being, which I think is incredibly lacking in our industry.
Awesome. And if anybody was helped even 0.004% by what we did today, it's all worth it. And, man, time just flew.
Well, absolutely.
I think we got a lot of completely 100% original stuff here, too. So what a pleasure. Thanks.
All right. You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles. Good night, everybody.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes a perfect gift. The book, written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com.
If you need help with your relationships, my buddy Frank, he's got some tips. Just go to franktalks.com. His advice is better than your mom's. He knows what you're going through, Frank has been there too. So log on to franktalks.com. franktalks.com.
Need help with love, sex, dating and relationships? Visit franktalks.com.
What do you do when you feel like a fool? When your heart has been broken again? Pick up the phone or get onto Skype and talk on a private session. Yeah, get a little help from Frank Talks. Whoa, get by with a little help from Frank Talks. You gotta try a little help from Frank Talks. What do you do when your love goes away? Try coaching one-on-one. How do I sign up to turn things around? Just sign up at franktalks.com. Yeah, get by with help from Frank Talks. I get by with little help from Frank Talks. Time to try a little help from Frank Talks. Does it cost a lot of money? It's the best rate going around. Could it cost a lot of money? Oh, it's worth every cent that you will Yes, we're certain, just read the reviews. Frank knows his stuff, and Frank's got goods. Good love can soon come to you. Oh, yes, he does. Yeah, yeah. FrankTalks.com. Need help with love, sex, dating, or relationship issues? Help from Frank Kermit, the best-selling author and Canada's most international relationship coach, is only a click away at franktalks.com.